I've been working on a 2D top-down dungeon crawler inspired by Dark Souls and Left 4 Dead. It's come a long way in just a few weeks, and in this video I'll show you what's new, from smarter enemies and better lighting to more dynamic feeling combat, as well as responding to some community feedback. The core combat of the game is pretty straightforward. You can attack quickly to push enemies back, or charge up your attack to deal some more damage. Right now you explore mostly linear levels with some side routes and shortcuts you can unlock, and for now the goal is just to reach the end of the level. Fountains work like safe rooms. They allow you to heal, recharge your lantern, and they serve as your respawn point when you die. Your lantern slowly drains over time, reducing visibility, but you can refill it using the candles that are scattered around the level. Here's what the game looked like just 1 month ago. As you can see, the visuals are quite dim, the lighting's not really working well, and there's only one enemy type. It's gonna get repetitive pretty quickly. So, how did I get to where I am today? Well, I'm using a shader that preserves more of the color of each light without letting things get too white. I also added a shadow outline shader to give everything a bit more depth and improve the overall atmosphere. With the visuals looking better, it was time to focus on gameplay. As it was, the gameplay was very repetitive with only one kind of enemy to kill. The game was fun, but I could see it getting old fast. So I needed to add some enemy variety. I added new visuals to differentiate the enemies, as well as some weapon systems to allow for different kinds of weapons and for them to have some unique stats each. I wanted the enemies with weapons to feel a bit more distinct. I didn't want them just running at you and attacking you the same way the regular enemies were doing. So I wanted to give them some unique behavior to make them more interesting to play against. So first I tried, making them much smarter, giving them the ability to, flank the player, try and get behind them, to back away if the player was going to attack them, to use their attack ranges better. They would use the quick attack if the player was too close, and if the player was closing in with an attack, they'd release their attack earlier. But trying to play versus these kind of enemies, it just wasn't fun. The regular enemies that had much less complicated behavior felt much more fun to play against. So, I had to think, what was going on here? What was wrong with these enemies that were supposedly improved? They had more interesting behavior, they did more interesting things, but why were they just less fun to play against? So there wasn't really an easy way to deal with these enemies. Unlike the regular enemies you could easily, dispatch of, these were much harder to fight against. And that wasn't making the game more fun. There was no easy, reliable strategy to use against them. Their movements weren't very predictable, so you didn't know exactly what they were going to do, and you didn't know how to think of a way to counter them. So going forwards, I realized what I needed to do was make enemies that were more predictable, and that the player could come up with some kind of strategy to deal with them that they could reliably use. This would make them much more fun to play against. They might not seem as smart. It's going to keep the gameplay much more interesting and much more fun to play against. So I went back to basics. I simplified the enemy behavior, giving them predictable movement patterns and clear weaknesses. That way the player can build strategies around how to deal with them, and it instantly made the combat more fun. Now moving forward, this will be the design rule for all the enemies. Predictable behavior with strategic counters that the player can think of to use against them. Once the combat felt more engaging, I went to see how others would react to the visuals. I posted a short gameplay clip on the Destroy My Game subreddit to get some outside feedback. Let's see what everyone had to say after they watched the video. I would change something visually. Green fog, green zombies, green cloud spray out mixed with the blood. It gets very muddy and hard to tell what's happening on screen. The surrounding fog looks horrid. Basically, a color swatch plus lighting is just bad as hell. The fog, the blood, all the particles are making the game foggy and hard to focus on the action. Also, a hit stop on every single enemy kill can make the game hard to appreciate with that many stops. It's a lag spike whenever you hit an enemy intended, because it looks extremely annoying to me, particularly in the long term. I mean, your game is literally lagging during your showcase. You've got a ways to go. Bloom is not a shortcut to looking good, even if it feels amazing to implement. I'd have skipped this on miniclip.com 25 years ago. And there's a comment I can't seem to find anymore, but all it said was fart maze. Yeah, I can see what they were coming at with that one. A lot of the responses focused on visual clarity and the color palette, and a lot of people didn't seem to understand the hit stop, with many people mistaking it for lag or the game freezing when you killed enemies, which is absolutely not the effect I wanted it to have. So I started looking into color theory. I watched a load of videos, about color theory and creating a color palette for your game. I rebuilt a bunch of the level tiles from scratch using these ideas I just learned. I also recolored a lot of existing assets to fit the new palette. There's still a long way to go, and I need to, I still need to create a lot of assets to fill these levels in and make each area feel unique, but it's already looking a lot more cohesive. I also started remaking the blood effects. The old ones were too messy, they covered the screen too much, and like some people said, they were looking a little basic. The new blood effects use hand-drawn animations. They're a lot simpler and much clearer during combat. They still have a long way to go in terms of improving them, but I think this style could go much further than the previous technique I was using. That's everything I've worked on in the past month. The game's really shaping up into something I'm really excited about. So next I'm going to be working on some more enemy types, adding some more variety to the environments, and improving some of the existing systems that are already in the game. I'm hoping soon I'm going to have a public demo I can put on itch.io for everyone to try out. So if you want to keep up with the game as it evolves, hit subscribe, leave a comment, and let me know what you think.